The stage structure that underlies the smart customer management model is more than a process standard comprising a list of best practices. Rather, it integrates improved practices that guides an organization through a series of organizational and cultural transformations, each of which supports the deployment of more sophisticated and mature customer-centered processes. Practices at each level of maturity prepare the organization for adopting practices at the next level. At the first level of maturity, the initial level, an organization has a consistent way of focusing on the customer. Since most customer-related processes are ad hoc, they are constantly reinvented on each project and frequently appear chaotic. The fundamental premise underlying any maturity framework is that a practice cannot be improved if it cannot be repeated. In an organization's least mature state, proven practices are repeated only sporadically. Without well-understood ways of approaching the customer, managers have no reliable basis for estimating the effort required to build customer relationships and work to meet customer needs. As a result, they frequently lose control of their schedule, cost, and product quality, and their results depend largely on the skills of salespeople and the quality of distributors. The first step in helping an organization improve its customer orientation is to remove the impediments that keep the organization from repeating successful customer-centered practices. At the second level of maturity, organizations must establish a foundation on which they can deploy common customer-centered processes across the organization. Before being able to successfully implement any advanced customer-centered practices, management must first establish a stable environment in which to perform initiatives that cross unit and department boundaries. Until basic management control is established over multifunctional areas and departments, no organization-wide practices have any chance of being deployed successfully. The primary objective of a maturity level 2 organization is to enable people to repeat the customer-centered practices they have used successfully in the past. To enable this repeatability, basic customer-centric management practices must first be locally implemented within a unit or project. Only when this discipline is established will the organization have a foundation on which it can deploy organization-wide processes. At the third level of maturity, the organization integrates its customer-centered practices into standard processes across all units and projects, and training is delivered to all. Once the organization defines a standard set of customer-centered processes, it has laid the foundation for a participatory customer-centric management culture. Many organizations on this stage report the emergence of a common customer-centric management culture as they achieve maturity level 3. This culture is based on building trustful relationships with the customer and the common beliefs about the effectiveness and value of these practices. At the fourth level of maturity, the organization begins managing its customer-centered processes through the data that describes its customer and organizational performance. The organization uses its data to identify its most valuable customers so that the historical performance can be used to predict and manage its future performance. The premise underlying this analytics-based management is that if a well-understood process is repeated, the organization should then predict its result. If the result obtained deviates significantly from the organization experience, the cause then needs to be determined and corrective action taken if necessary. Since business processes are now managed based on customer analytics rather than just by milestones, the organization can take corrective action much earlier and its performance becomes much more predictable. At the fifth and highest level of maturity, the organization uses its deep customer knowledge to make continuous improvements in its processes. Based on its customer data, the maturity level 5 organization can identify which processes can most benefit from innovation and improvement actions. These improvements can involve actions ranging from adjustments to processes to the deployment of new technologies, organizational changes, or the delivery of customized solutions to the customer. Change management becomes a standard organizational process at this stage, and process improvement becomes continuous throughout the organization. Since the organization has competent teams performing trusted customer-centered processes and managing the customer relationships, people is now empowered to innovate and to propose organizational changes.